Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to MD2 Ministries. And tonight we're going to talk about the foster care section of my ministry and blog that maybe some of you guys have been reading. And I guess I didn't really have an episode title for this thought up, but I suppose it's not what you think. So foster care is most definitely, typically not what anyone thinks. So the 4 topics, because I suppose I'm just going to be a 4-topic kind of person this month, that I thought I would talk about tonight are purpose, agency, support system, and self-care. And I kind of summed it up. My husband and I do lots of training because I talked about that in my ESL episode, but that I believe in training. If you could read yourself into being the best trained person in the world or really good at stuff, I would be the best at everything. So we believe in taking training to help us with our kiddos, our own adopted kids, our foster kids, because there are so many challenges that they present with behaviors. We've taken lots of training and different methods, and it's great. It's wonderful. I really suggest that even if you have birth children, or if you work with kids in a classroom, if you volunteer in Sunday school or children's ministry, if you're a teacher, if you coach, that you consider taking TBRI or any kind of trauma child training, because it really is very, very helpful in dealing with kids of any kind of background. Because if you were pregnant and you were in a car accident, your kid their brain has changed and they become a trauma child. If your child was premature and they were in the NICU, there are so many things that cause a child to be trauma, that is not just that they were in foster care or they were adopted. So that's totally different topic. So, but anyway, so my husband and I do lots of training. So I have something that I have designed. I call it the kitty back method. And so my husband was really enjoyed that. He was in the Army, so he loves acronyms. So he enjoyed the kitty back method. So, so fostering, what I thought was that I would talk about one of the big things people tell me is they couldn't give them back. That's the big thing. We couldn't stand giving them back. And foster care is designed to be temporary. And most of our placements have lasted anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Because my husband and I are a enhanced foster care home. We are designed for 4 or more siblings to keep them together, which definitely has its own challenges, and that might just be its own episode. But you have to think about your purpose. And I will talk about giving them back in a little bit, but what is your purpose? And when my husband and I went through the process of deciding as a couple to become foster parents, we always had the goal of adoption. We wanted to adopt at some point. We knew that God would send us the children that were supposed to be our forever children. But we also felt like that we would have kids that were not our forever kids along the way. And we said, what is our purpose? Well, our purpose is to share and introduce the love of Jesus with whoever God sends into our home. And we knew that there would be heartbreaks, and mostly they would probably be ours. And we said, so who are the adults here? Who are the people that already know Christ, and who are the people that are, if you want to say trained, but who are the people that know the promises and the love of God already? And so who are the ones that can stand the heartbreak? And we decided we would be the grown-ups, because we have the support system, we have each other, and we already know about Christ and His love and His grace. And so we decided that although it is not ever fun to deal with foster care, the situations that those kids have gone through, the pain that they're in, the pain of the parents, the pain of the court and the system, which is a whole different kind of pain, those things are not fun. But it's not about us. Jesus' pain was not about Him. It was for us. And we decided that the purpose was for the children. And that while I went through a serious heartbreak twice over kids, that situation didn't turn out like we hoped. And it didn't turn out like we wanted it to. And every foster parent probably has a similar experience, where there are kids and keeps you up at night, sometimes worrying how those kids turned out. But I can promise you that every kid that came through our house knows that my husband and I love them, that there's a God that loves them, and that Jesus Christ came and died for their sins. And most of them who are old enough to comprehend, if they weren't already baptized, they became Christian, became saved, and got baptized while they live with us. So while their life here on earth may not be as pleasant as we would like, we know we'll see them in heaven. So, and then I'm going to cry, which I don't cry that often, but anyway, so what was our purpose? That was our purpose. And we decided we had to be the ones that were going to suck it up and take the pain, because we wanted to introduce something lifelong. And that even if we could only love them for a few months, that might be enough to change the direction of those kids' lives. That they could know forever that there was a couple that loved them, and that Jesus loved them. And so, and maybe it will be enough, maybe it won't, I don't know. But at least we could try. And we felt really, that was what our calling was. And we've had to remind each other of that more than once, because it's not easy. It's not easy when kids are crying, I promise I'll be good if I can just stay with you. And you're telling them, no, the judge says it's going to be really great for you to go with so-and-so person. So, what's your purpose? And so I talked about training, and there's lots of training out there. I could, I'll probably talk about, good training on another day. But my husband and I said the kitty back method is what I told him, and he loved it. KITABYC. I will type it out there. Keeping it together as best you can. I think that is a good method for parenting overall. But, some people think, well, what am I going to do with these kids? Because they have so much going on. And, and they will forever. We adopted ours, some of the kids we fostered, and forever they're going to have stuff going on, right? If you've read my blog, then there's stuff going on daily. Some nights our house, everybody goes to bed, and it's like, oh, we have just these wonderful, great kids. And some nights, it's like one kid is in the other room screaming, and my husband's trying to calm them down, or I'm trying to tell the other kids, it's okay, just go to sleep. They're having a bad day, and we'll do deep breathing, and, it's just, it is what it is, and that's about all you can say is, the brain has actually changed. Certain things trigger them. I could go on and on about why it is what it is, but it is what it is, and that's all that matters. And when my husband and I haven't slept in a month, and we're stressed, and he has to go to work, and it's 107 degrees in his shop in Alabama, and I've had the kids all day behaving like they behave, because I have the truly great joy of being able to stay home and do volunteer work. But that means in the summer I get to be with the kids all day, which is a joy, but it is challenging when you don't like to be with people all day, every day. Keeping it together as best you can. Do we do everything right all the time? Absolutely not. Are there days when I'm like, God, why do you even let me have these kids? Because I don't deserve them at all. Absolutely. But do I know that we are doing what God would have us do? Absolutely. Because our kids are doing okay. And are they better off than they were? For sure. And if you're a Christian family that God has said maybe you should foster, there is no doubt they'll be better off with you, because there are tons of kids languishing in care. If you could hear my kids talk about the foster home they were in before us, they were miserable. I've had friends who work in the system talk about kids in the stories that you see on the news, like kids who are only allowed to eat after the family's biological kids got to eat, and they could only eat the leftovers. Like, those things have happened. People I know have heard those stories from real kids. Kids who were taken into care, whose bodies are permanently atrophied because they were just left in a crib for like 8 years until DHR found them. So our system is stressed. So when you're concerned about the system, that's on you. Like, that's on all of us. We've got to work harder to help the system, because people don't, if you're not part of the system, you don't think about the system. So it's not a concern to you, so we don't work to improve it. So we have to work to help the system, but just keep it together as best you can. There are days when I'm like, that today was a giant parent epic fail. But give yourself grace, because I'm pretty sure, my husband and I don't have biological kids, so it's kind of not as easy for us all the time to know, like, what we would have done if we don't have a sense of comparison, like what quote normal kids would be like, because all we have are our foster kids that we've had before, and our adopted kids, and all the kids we have are trauma kids with issues. And we didn't get our kids as babies. We got them as preteen, like 8, 9. Well, I guess our youngest was 6 when he first came to us. So, but anyway, we got them as older kids, and we've had fosters from like 18 months up to 16. So we've had all different age groups, but we, our own children are, we got them starting at 6. So just give yourself grace and keep it together as best you can. Just like anything else in life, there are days of most epic failure, and then there are days when you look at your kids and you're like, wow, like I am helping make you this great person that you're becoming, but know that, they have a much better chance of failure without Christian homes, like for sure, because we all have we are all more likely to fail without Christ, because if we don't help them, if we don't introduce them to Jesus, then what hope do they have? They're not in places where Christ is going to be introduced to them, and so how are they going to ever learn about the saving grace of Jesus? They're going to have to find it as adults later, which we all know that how much more difficult it is the older you get to become introduced to Christ. So, no matter what, they're better off with you sharing the love of Christ, taking them to church, establishing those patterns so that they learn, and encountering those behavior patterns that they learned were okay. I mean, there are very strict rules about what is okay for foster parents to do to their foster kids. And mostly our kids have told us that a lot of those rules are obeyed in their foster homes towards them, but the parents don't have to obey them necessarily towards their own children. So they still see a lot of the things that they were, you can't spank your foster kids, but you can spank your biological kids. So that trauma is kind of there. So, and I like to think that as Christians, we even if we spank our kids, which of course, like I said, we only have our adopted kids, but we behave differently towards our children. We're called to be different to the world. So I like to think that we are different. And our kids have said that our home is much different. Every set of kids we've ever had has always said our home is different. And when they go to respite in other agape homes, that's who we foster through a private agency, they've always said that our homes are different. And it's because we're Christian homes. And we are called to be different. And we do it because we're sharing the love of Christ. And it makes a tremendous difference. So please consider that you would be, God's calling us. We can't, it's not something that someone else can do. We have to do it. And you don't have to be family, you can be single. Another thing I would suggest is if you're calling, work through an agency, like a private agency. We work through an agency. I mean, in Alabama, it's DHR, and you can foster, like they can license you, but you can also be licensed through an agency. And the advantage is we work through a Christian agency, so we have their support. We have the support of their agents. We have the support of them praying for us. We have the support of their donors and their support of their, like when it's back to school and when we need back to school clothes or anything like that. We have all of their support. We have the support of their counseling staff. We have the support of their knowledge. And DHR, for us, Department of Human Resources, is just overworked and understaffed. And I don't know of any state in the union where that is not true. So we have the support of our agents, and they just have knowledge, and they will go to bat for us with DHR. So when we have issues, we have the support of our agency. And it also helps us because we can get placements from a much wider area. So like if there's an example for us nearby, there is an area where the judges are just very difficult to work with. And I'll talk about ways to help with that later. But I don't have to choose to take kids from that county. I can take kids from other counties because I work through an agency, as opposed to my county is DHR. So I have a much wider area of ability to work. So an agency just gives you an extra layer of help that and that you can use. So I strongly suggest you contact an agency to help you foster. It will also make you feel much more competent and able to handle fostering because you have someone you can call. Now most of social workers I've ever worked with have been available pretty much any time because they're overworked, but they want to be of help. They want you to succeed. They're trying to help these kids. They're just tremendously overworked. So don't get me wrong and hear me say that, my DHR social workers were not available. It's not that. It's just the private agency social workers typically, they can manage how many people they take in because they're a private agency, and so they can just manage things a little bit better. So, so that's work with an agency would be my second. I guess that's my third point. I guess I have 5 points today. Develop a support system. That is sort of where my husband and I guess our big epic fail in the beginning was feeling like we were supposed to be able to do everything on our own, like we were supposed to know how to handle it, and not wanting to let people know that, I'm like drowning, and somehow expecting that we're going to get out of the water, like you're 10 feet underwater and you're drowning and you don't want to, like throw up an arm for help. Develop a support system. Now there are, and that's another thing, if you don't feel like called to be a specific foster parent, like you're not at a stage in life where you can do it, there are ministries that you can start or have going that support foster families. So they have different names, like wrap your arms around foster family, like we call ours Call to Care. There are lots of different names, but the general idea would be, some of them do babysitting, make dinner for foster families, prayer, physical resources, just different things for foster families. Some of them do foster and adoptive families because, like I said, we still have our own challenges, despite the fact that our kids are adopted. It's not like something that just ends because you sign paperwork and are done with DHR. So, but develop a support system, and if you're a church, be a support system, because our kids are really well behaved on Sunday. They're actually better behaved than a lot of kids who have been to church much longer. But they're just great kids. So people don't necessarily know the screaming, the shouting, the broken door frames we have at our house, the tantrums. Like, they don't see that aspect of how we struggle, which is okay. I mean, it's not everybody's business the way we struggle with our kids. That's not what I'm saying, but we need a support system. You're going to need a support system because there is a honeymoon phase, which is, awesome, because that's how, it's like when, you have your little babies, like if you didn't get to love them first, then when they're like making you stay up all night, throwing up and everything else, or when they're teenagers, you couldn't still take them if you didn't have that phase where they're just absolutely adorable. So there's a lot of really challenging times. So you want a good support system. And counseling, I strongly suggest that be one of your supports, because fostering is heart-wrenching, and I don't just mean, like if they stay or if they go. I just mean listening to the things that the kids have gone through and the way they talk about it. Like, oh yeah, that's where my mom took my dad when he got shot. And no, that's the place where, my dad, and this has not happened to my kids, so not the kids I have now. This is where my dad used to take me and my sister alone by ourselves to camp in the woods overnight when they were 3. Like, things that are just not normal, things that should happen and make you really wonder, like, and that's why I'm afraid of the dark. Just things that you just have to, either bad things happen or you wonder what bad things happened. Sometimes like they were horribly sexually abused, or they suspect. Sometimes I've had kids that told me they saved their food to share with their dog because they weren't sure they were going to the dog was going to starve to death. Like, just things that just break, like, you still don't know how you're going to keep yourself together, because it's just wrong that kids should have to suffer like this. So develop a support system for yourself. Counseling is good because it hurts. It hurts to see kids that you care about hurt this way. And you have to remember your goal is to work towards getting these kids back with their biological family who, a lot of times you don't really want to. Like, you don't really like these people. You want, maybe if you're a good Christian, you want to like them, but it's difficult. But another thing that you learn is that reunification is a good thing. And you over time, you kind of get to where, there are some things that are just difficult. If you've ever had anyone in your family who is an alcoholic or a drug addict, it's just a terrible disease. And the desire to kick the habit is different than the ability to kick the habit. So there is that a lot of our kids come from that background. Other issues, parents, they work towards it. And when you see the parents and you see them working towards good goals and trying really hard, it's joyful to reunite those kids and their parents when you watch the parents work and you see the kids together. So when you say I would be too hard to give them up, it's really not. And there have been times I've really been counting the days, to be honest, because the kids can be difficult and challenging, and it's not always so hard, and you wish that sometimes it were harder, but sometimes you're just ready. It's just best for everybody that they move on. And there are other times when it just feels like your heart's on, like you're never going to heal. There was one time when we lost a placement, and it was near Mother's Day, and I just couldn't even go to church because I did not want to hear a sermon about how wonderful mothers were, and I just couldn't listen to it. I just couldn't go. And I told my husband, I don't want to hear about the promises of God today. I know what they are, and I don't want to hear it. I'm not ready right now. It took me several weeks before I could even talk about it because it was just so incredibly painful. So, and part of that support system, and again, if you're not in a stage where you can be a foster parent, be an advocate, because one of the biggest issues we face as foster parents is our judicial system. People do not pay great attention to judges that they elect necessarily, and how the judges make decisions for these kids. And there are kids who languish, at least in my state, there are kids who languish in foster care for 15 years because judges won't terminate parental rights. And I know that happens nationwide. And that is absolutely ridiculous. In Alabama, the law says after 1 year, they're supposed to move to terminate parental rights. If they did that, then those kids would get adopted because they'd be like 3. But instead, they're doing it when the kids are 8 or 10. The kids have been moved to 15 foster homes now. They have terrible behaviors. The kids have no sense of security. They don't think anyone loves them. And their behaviors are, I wouldn't say incurable, but you have to have someone who wants to pour into a lifetime of extremely difficult behavior in order to find them a permanent home. And a lot of those kids are going to end up in facilities where they learn even more terrible behaviors. They're going to end up homeless. I mean, it's just a really bad outcome, all because a judge would not terminate parental rights on a parent who had more than a year to prove, progress in a goal. So just really advocate, look at your judges, help your foster parents out in that way, because you're helping the kids, and it's something that is completely achievable. The support system also would include like babysitting services, because we can't just have a 16-year-old babysit our kids. It's just not. And even when they're 16, they can't be left home alone. So we need older babysitters. We need people who are can handle some challenging behaviors. People sometimes don't want to do what we are very rigid at our house. Like, I know if you have a toddler or whatever, maybe you are on a strict schedule. We are very rigid at our house because our kids need structure. And I like structure anyway, but people think I'm a little bit too maybe by the book, but it is vital for our kids to have structure, for everything to go by the book. And, occasionally we'll make exceptions, but if a babysitter comes and it's just, let's have a fun night, our house will turn into chaos and disaster, and it will be a bad night. You have to follow the rules. And so you have to have babysitters who can understand that our kids can't just have super fun free time night. Like, it can be fun, but it has to be within a structure. Like, everything has to go by, like, it just can't be like, your normal, not normal, but kids that don't have the kind of background that our kids do. Because remember, especially when they're in foster care, like, their future is not certain. Very little is certain. So everything has to be structured to make them feel safe, so that they understand, okay, so I know what's going to happen at 6 o'clock, we're going to have dinner. I know what's going to happen at 6:30, I'm going to take my bath. I know what's going to happen at 7 o'clock, I'm going to take my gummies. I know what's going to happen at 7:30, we're going to read our bedtime story. Like, so that they have certain things that they know that they can count on. That's how it has to be. And self-care. Like, make sure that part of that is that you care for yourself, because as parents of kids that take a lot of work, it is very easy to for yourself to get lost in that. That again is one of the big mistakes my husband and I struggled with in the beginning. It's just hard. It's just hard to take time out for yourself. It's hard to take a break. I mean, if you're a parent, it's hard to take a break. It's hard to take a date night when you can't find a babysitter who can take care of your kids appropriately. We have 4 kids. It's hard to take a date night, period. We even just, if you have a bunch of kids, ferrying your kids to and fro, like, it's just make sure that you're taking care of yourself emotionally. And that's why I say counseling, that you're taking care of yourself and your kids. I always suggest it's for whatever reason here in my state, it's not part of a kid's, if you want to call it a package, to getting your kids into counseling, because there is no reason that any kid that's in foster care does not need counseling. Some of you may not have the same views on mental health that I do, but any kid, that they at least need to be assessed by a counselor, because they got issues, if you want to say. They need someone to process through, to help them process through what's going on while they're in foster care, because we don't have the ability to know. Like most of my kiddos, they have questions that they don't know the answers to, and I don't always know myself what's the best things to tell them, and I don't always know age appropriately what's best to tell them. But your kids are not always mature wise. They're never going to be maturity and age matching. So a counselor can help you. Okay, well, your kid may be chronologically 10, but they're only about 5 on a maturity level emotionally, but they're 7 in as far as social skills maturity. So it's all going to be mismatched because of the stages that they missed, developmental. It's just, you just kind of have to, and so a professional person can help you. They may not be in counseling long, they could be in counseling forever. It depends on the kid, their personality, how they work through things, and the kind of stable home that you give them. So, but support system. So, if you are a foster parent, considering being a foster parent, I guess mostly this is for people considering it, because if you're already fostering it, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but just consider your purpose. The kitty back, keep it together as best you can, and give yourself grace, because there is no one for, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and just be thankful for His grace. I suggest you work with an agency, and even if you're a current foster parent, when your placement ends, you can switch to an agency if you find that working through your local, DHR or social services has been frustrating, dissatisfying, or causing you to be discouraged or no longer want to foster. You can switch to an agency. You just can't do it while you have an active placement. Develop a support system of people you can count on, who will be there for you, whether it's, look, I just can't, and don't hesitate to ask. And this is my biggest problem, because I hate to ask for help. I hate to feel like I'm imposing on people. But if you can't make dinner, you can't make dinner. And there are days when you are too tired and there's too much going on to make dinner. And we have days where we're just feel like we're throwing food at our kids because we have so many activities. I told you I have 4, and we've got this activity and that activity, and it's like, just eat something. Here, take this. And one of the things you can't do with fosters or adopted kids is, food is not a battle that you can have. So if they don't eat it, they don't eat it. We have a rule, eat what we cook or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because they'll eat peanut butter and jelly and they won't eat a lot of other stuff. So, if you have someone who will make dinner, someone who can babysit, someone you can talk to, someone who helps with homework, get yourself a good support system, because you're going to need it. And take care of yourself, because it's an incredibly difficult journey. And I guess that's why people always say that we're special, even though it kind of just, I think we just follow God's calling on our lives, whatever it is. And just like someone who does it for mission trips, just like someone who does it to teach Sunday school, just like someone who does it in any other area, this just happens to be a calling that God has put on our hearts. And I think He puts it on more people than actually follow it. So if you have any questions, comments, things that you'd like to say, or questions to ask, emptytombblogger@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer those questions. I don't have a lot of expertise, but I do have a lot to say.